Hi, James. Thank you for coming back on and talking with me today. James Bartley is a researcher and he has a lot of knowledge about esoteric subjects and spiritual warfare, and he has a lot of knowledge, and he has a website, cosmicswitchboard.com, which I highly recommend. And yeah, just like to have a talk about a few things about our situation now, and maybe some spiritual warfare stuff, interference, and those kind of topics, and just consciousness in general, maybe. And yeah, thank you, James.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a while. It's been a few years since.
Yeah, it has been. We haven't talked in a long time.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of things have happened, obviously, because yeah, we have this medical stuff going on since about 2020, I guess, and it feels like it just started, and I feel like it's been very overwhelming, but it's the same thing for 4 years now, and I think a lot of people are, I guess, in that trauma still of what's happening, and especially with all the rules that have been implemented. And yeah, I mean, I can still talk to people about what's happened and have a laugh about it, but there is so much pain in that, because as a humanity, I think we don't really know what's going to happen. Like there's literally two timelines, I guess, that we could take, and it's very hard.
Yeah, the last few years have been challenging to say the least, and we've been habituated generally into conforming and doing so many things. It's before the QR codes were there because you needed to check in and out of places, and then they made it so well. If you want to uh, log on to binge or log on to something, or you want to find out what
Yeah.
a product line is, suddenly there's all these QR codes. So, and
Mhm.
people are not habituated to using them, for convenience sake, really, right? So
Yeah.
you put your phone up to a QR code in a retail store, and then it pulls up the whole product line, all the specifications for whatever electronic equipment you want, and it's all meant to convey this impression of convenience, and we're doing it for you, it's all easy, but really it was just part of the trap to get people
Yeah.
habituated to always checking in and conforming to the system. So we just have to be wary of the fact that the World Health Organization is up to their old tricks, and they're already pushing this disease X, whatever this disease X is. Apparently they've already got a cure for it, so called, and we know what their cures are like. So apparently, there's been some pushback in a number of governments around the world, a number of countries where they're saying, no, we've had enough of you guys. And apparently, they're not able to steamroller all these countries that they have in the past by pushing through their global WHO pandemic treaty. So that's a good thing, but that doesn't mean it's going to stop them from trying to do whatever they want to do, because these people are psychopaths, and they're at the top leadership levels. They're not even human. So
Mm.
we're at that point in time where uh, celestially driven events are going to be coming back, and these controllers or would-be controllers of this world, they're going to start pulling out all the stops, whether it's a expanded global war, economic collapse, all this other stuff that's going on. And so I don't put it past them that they would try to play the pandemic card again, because they've already trained and conditioned so many people to roll over with that. And they managed to do it in a way where they got not only got their acquiescence, but they got their willingness to go along, because they've habituated them for so long with movies, with cinema, with TV shows and what have you, that when they were presented with this concept of a global pandemic a few years back, it was like, ooh, now we're part of the movie. We can be part of it and put masks on and shame others, and and do our part, for the community, because it's this hive herd mentality, which they had spent a lot of time inculcating into the masses. And you saw. the results of that. When they started pushing this, so many people knuckled under, so many people went along with it. So I think this time around, if they try to pull that again, there's still going to be a significant amount of people that go along with it and will try to shame and bully the rest. But there's also going to be larger numbers of people who absolutely will not go along with this because they've seen the painful results the last few years, what's happened. So I think in that regard, there's going to be some pushback, which is good because at this point, it's all about survival. At this point, acquiescence means death.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of people pushing back as well, but I just don't know because it is a very much individual thing as well as a collective thing, and I think that we still struggle to agree, on collective, well, not like community. I don't know how to say that because there is still a lot of like infight. Like people are still fighting about really silly, stupid things. Like,
Yes, yes, it's very easy to do that, and it's
yeah,
aided and abetted by the bots and the trolls on social media. You go to these like classic vintage sports sites, right, and American orientated, and then someone will write something that they know is guaranteed to stir up controversy, animosity, mouth foaming rage, right?
yeah,
But they put it out there anyway, just to stir the pot, and people fall for it because they got nothing else going on in their life and they can't see through the deception, right? That
yeah,
often is not. It'll be bots or sock puppets, not even real people that are doing these things, just
yeah,
to stir up controversy. So it's very easy to get people to choose sides or to uh, be, develop an animus towards this, that, or the other concept, thing, or person. And we've seen over time that process develop. Now it's extreme. Now they're just bringing in all these extreme points of view and extreme uh, mindsets, and we're just supposed to accept it as being normal, right?
yeah.
So it's just
I
very
know.
interesting to see how it all developed.
Well, yeah. I mean, because a lot of people talk about the golden age, like that is supposed to happen. And I feel like, I mean, I do feel that will happen. I just, it's hard to unify that field because, like, yeah, there is still a lot of fighting and a lot of, opposition and stuff like this. And it's, yeah, it is always usually like really the topics aren't like flat earth and all those kind of things, like they're not important overall. Like
Yes,
we need to be focusing on what's important, like fresh clean living water and stuff like that. I think that we could unite with
yes,
those
stuff that
two.
everyone can agree on. The problem is so
Yeah,
many of these people, these troublemakers of various stripes, they're literally entity infested. It's the ideology and the creed that
yes,
they're indoctrinated with in the school systems and what have you, and from their peers and from social media.
yeah,
These are intolerant people. They're dumb. They have low IQs, and they're extremely intolerant and biased. And they are authoritarians. They're control freaks. They want to bend you to their will. If you don't think the way they do, they're going to
mm,
censor you, cancel you. They're going to try something, right? They just hordes of them have been created by the system, and they're too stupid and too entity infested to realize they're being used as tools, right? But the last laugh is on them because if this world ever goes fully communist, right? Fully Luciferian communist. The first thing the communists always do is they just get rid of all the useful idiots in every country they take over because they're not going to want any more complainers. They're not going to want any extra mouths to feed. All these leftist troublemakers, they have a use by date. And we've
mm,
already seen it. We've already seen it in the mass protest against the genocide in Gaza. These so-called leftists have taken up the cause of Hamas, which itself is an Israeli creation, and are going around protesting, you know, on behalf of the people of Gaza. And now they're getting canceled. They're getting shut down. They're getting doxxed, right? And people
mm-hmm,
will say, well, this is an example of the left eating its own. That this shows that we're winning. No, not necessarily. Those leftists, especially in the school systems, they have a use by date, an expiration date, and their expiration date has come up. They don't need them anymore. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them were goaded or encouraged into protesting on behalf of the Gazans. And you know, normally on any normal planet, who wouldn't protest and become indignant over mass slaughter and genocide, right? It's our
Yeah.
right to be indignant over such things. It doesn't make us anti anything, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
the way they use these leftists is okay. Now they're complaining, or we've gotten them to complain about the mass slaughter in Gaza and the West Bank, and soon to be maybe the whole world. And they're protesting. Now let's shut them down. Let's cancel their scholarships, kick them out of the schools, fire them from our corporations, and instill more censorship. So the
Mm.
end result of these leftists protesting on behalf of the Gazans is more censorship. Surprise, surprise, right? So to the bitter end, they've still used it, served the useful purpose
Yeah.
for the controllers. And like I said, if it ever, and I hope it doesn't come to pass, but if this whole planet becomes communist, they're the first ones to go, because that's the pattern in all these other countries. When the communists thoroughly take over, they get rid of the local leftists and the local malcontents. That's just the way it is, and good riddance as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So either way, I think that, yeah, it's interesting that you said about the thoughts, because I mean, like, we don't have to agree with everything that someone thinks, and that's the thing. They're really onto this thought control, especially with social media, especially with like all these other avenues that they're doing online. Like, it's really frustrating to see that it's like we could so easily agree on some things, but we're just so divided, and it's like I think there will be a time when all the control systems will just fail. Like it can't sustain anymore. Like you said, either way, like it's just not going to sustain in the future. But how that's going to happen, I mean, it's not really relevant. But I just feel like it probably has to go like back to basics. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe, and
Yeah, it's like a communal living where everyone pulls
yeah,
their fair share, and there's no freeloaders and grifters. That even
yeah,
if people have disabilities, they will be cared for. But like people with disabilities have jobs still. They still function
yeah.
in society. So right? There will be no grifters and no freeloaders and no takers, and that's what this system fosters is this taker freeloader mentality, and then they go to exacerbate things by bringing in hordes of immigrants who have that exact same mentality. What's mine is mine. When basically they come here with nothing. What's yours is mine. And you're going to start believing what we do. You're going to start wearing a veil or a burqa or
Mhm.
whatever, right? So what we're seeing is the supplanting of the traditional European ethnic heritage, which built these cities, which built these bridges, which built these airports. And now
Mhm.
look what's going on in America with all these diversity hires and what have you. They want to instill a fear of flying, of passenger airliner travel, and they're purposely hyping up all these fears about malfunctioning planes and unqualified mechanics, and that's what they're doing. They're hiring a whole bunch of patently unqualified people in the guise of diversity, equity, inclusiveness. But really, the whole idea is to
Mm.
make it so air travel becomes untenable. And also, there's a whole nother reason behind that, I feel, which I can get into later. But they're going to need cover stories for for a lot of
Yeah.
stuff coming up in a not so distant future.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. It probably does it have to do with the medical, like the control of medical? No, not really.
Oh well, you mean as far as all the like what's going on with Boeing and
No, I
they
just,
don't
yeah,
go ahead.
because I was thinking in regards to, how they mandated stuff so that people couldn't travel and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but
Well,
because yeah.
a way to get around that because they lifted the mandates and allowed international travel again and
Mm-hmm.
domestic travel. But I mean, if we start having like a lot of airline disasters, and that's going to be a disincentive for people, to want to fly. And also getting into
Mm-hmm.
the alien UFO angle, there were periods of time. Linda Moulton Howe gave a very good lecture about this. One of the topics she covered in a lecture some time ago about how in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was a period of time when there was an extraordinary amount of passenger airliner crashes that in a number of cases were directly attributable to UFOs, to alien activity, to alien craft, because the aliens were retaliating because the air forces of the West, and this is going on in the Soviet Union too at the time, were understanding orders to engage and attack these alien craft. And so they're smart enough, the aliens were, to retaliate, but retaliate against unarmed passenger airliners. And so there was a point in time when like 7 planes a day were going down around the world, right? And point being is that if something like that starts happening again, they can
Mm-hmm.
easily write it off as, oh, that's another example of blue beam, and also it's all these diversity hires that are maintaining the planes and working as air traffic controllers now, which is a terrifying thought, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like it's providing future cover, but it's also a disincentive for international travel. And the WEF and other globalist organizations have been very upfront. They say they don't want people to travel. They want them to stay in their little 15-minute cities, et cetera, et cetera. So, all this happening now with Boeing and all this happening with air travel right now, it's just the latest in a series that goes back at least as far as all the hijackings in the 60s and 70s, which a lot of that was a false flag staged, right? Using
Mm-hmm.
proxy Palestinian splinter groups, what have you, and Bader Meinhof can instill this fear of air
Yeah.
travel and this fear of terrorism. And then you fast forward to 9/11, and then you know everything changed about air travel at that point. And so you see, I see it as a continuum. That this is just the latest thing they're doing with the airlines.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 So then, what do you think about the disclosure and, like, I guess how that's going to be used against a lot of us? Because I still, yeah, I mean, like you have intensive research on the topic and experiences and all that kind of stuff, and like a lot of people do. But I just fear that, I mean, there's a lot, like it's even on the news now, there's a lot of hype at the moment, and I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
Yeah.
it triggers the hell out of the surface level truthers who are brainwashed and dumbed down into thinking that aliens don't exist and alien craft aren't real. You have
Mm,
these blowhards like Alex Jones saying Roswell didn't happen,
mm,
aliens don't, there aren't aliens aren't here, there are no crashed alien craft, there are no alien bodies. Complete nonsense. There have been numerous people with far more credibility than Alex Jones,
mm,
Jay Dyer, or any of those other surface level dwids, right?
mhm,
They've
mhm,
become the new cancel culture. They've become the new doxers. Who are they to presume what we want to study and what we want to research, right?
mm,
Like the Miami incident. I researched that like I would any other alien, potential alien event, right? It's not up to them to tell me that it's a psyop and a distraction.
mm,
A
mm.
distraction from what? Nobody out there cares about the Epstein list. I'm out and about in society. I never hear people talking about it. So who's being distracted? Well, it's these surface level truthers who are brainwashed because they're mostly, a lot of them are Christian Zionists. They don't even know that.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing also is there's this notion put forth by, these fakes like Nick Pope, that the whole flying saucer, rocket ship, outer space meme only came about in early 1920s, early 1930s, with science fiction writers like H.G. Wells and
Mm,
Buck Rogers movies and Buck Rogers cartoons. That's nonsense. So you look at these books that I've been reading. Pierre Sabak, Murder of Reality, Hidden Symbolism of the Dragon, and this other book which I've got here somewhere, Holographic Culture. It goes into detail Pierre has studied the Aramaic, the Hebrew, the Greek, the Latin, and he studied the connection in words and etymological roots. There's the other book, Holographic Culture, Pierre
Oh, no.
Sabach, and
Yeah.
and I've been talking to Dan Armstrong, a colleague, about this, and I've had him on the show recently. I'm going to have him back, and the Old Testament, just the Old Testament alone, never mind the ancient Vedic texts and ancient Hindu texts and all that, but in the Sumerian Chronicles, for example, but just
Mm.
the Old Testament is replete with references to aliens, to reptilians, to lizard people, but it's
Yeah.
in a certain language. And when you track the origins, etymological roots of the words to describe the shining ones, the watchers, the wheels in the sky, the boats in the sky, they all refer to alien craft or aliens, and particularly lizard-like beings. It's absolutely conclusively been proven by
Mhm.
Pierre Salbach, and Mauro Buglino has gone a long way in showing how the Old Testament is all about these flesh and blood alien creatures. The term heavenly host, for example, host refers to two related topics. One, a host refers to the crew of a vessel, of a naval vessel. But when we're talking about a celestial vessel, a celestial boat, it refers to the alien crew members. So you have all these Christian fundamentalists out there who say there are no aliens, there's only demons and fallen angels, and they're praying, to their Lord God to help send some heavenly host to save us. So they're calling on heavenly hosts, which are really alien crewmen. They don't even know that. It's in the language. And all the
Mhm.
references to wheels and chariots in the sky over
Mhm.
and over and over, right?
Mhm.
There's far more evidence in the ancient text in various cultures of aliens than people realize. So this notion that it all started in 1947, it all started, you know, with Kenneth Arnold's sighting, it all started with Roswell, and now they've moved the goalpost again. It all started with the Tic Tac videos and the Navy fighter pilots encounters. That's nonsense. This has been going on. The Watchers and the term fallen angels, too, when you look at the etymological roots of the term fallen angel, it harkens back once again to serpents, to lizards, to reptilian beings. So when you see these fundamentalists, these fundies, saying, oh, there's no aliens, there's only fallen angels, there's only demons, they don't even know what they're talking about. So they don't even, they're not even qualified to venture an opinion about aliens, and let alone say they don't exist. So
Mhm.
what I see going forward is an increase. We're already seeing it, a massive increase in alien activity, and this is why, in my view, they created the Blue Beam psyop. The psyop is Blue Beam itself. The aliens are here. This is an alien control system.
Yeah.
There are, I don't know, how far you want me to get into this, but I mean, there's people disappearing off the surface every day and have been for countless millennia. And the human race is not at the top of the food chain. Never has been. And these
Mhm.
aliens of various stripes, particularly the reptilians and the Draco and the mantis beings and others, the Greys, they're quite familiar with the celestially driven cataclysmic timetable that they have to operate under.
Yeah.
The adepts, the warlocks, the high ranking members of the fraternal orders, they know about the celestially driven cataclysmic timetable as well. They know that cataclysms are coming back. This is why they're doing all this stuff now. This is why everything's bubbled up to the surface. The gender bending, the complete confusion and perversion and inversion of everything. Those are Luciferian modalities of thought, which they've now normalized in society. They got everyone thinking in Luciferian terms, whether they realize it or not, and not the least of which are these surface level truthers who are like religious fundamentalist eliminationists. They're exactly the type of religious freaks who were entity infested and were behind things like the Inquisition and the witch hunts. And remember, the witch hunts lasted for centuries. to the point where there were some towns in Germany that were absolutely denuded of females, young, old, didn't matter. All the females of certain locales were just eliminated, right?
Mm.
And that's
Mhm.
entity infested. That's reptilian. That's demonic in nature. And these people have the same mentality. Now, anytime anything of an alien nature happens anywhere in the world, we have this chorus, this gallery start chirping about blue beam, it's a psyop, a distraction, which is complete nonsense. Now you were asking about disclosure, so I had to put that as a preface that this information is embedded in the language. I'm not just talking about the Sumerians and Babylonians and what have you, or the ancient Indian Vedic texts and the other holy books in ancient India. But we're talking also about the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's there. It's in the apocryphal books. It's there that the aliens, the Watchers, the Shining Ones, they're here. They're not just some ephemeral will o' the wisp, non corporeal, although they can be at times. These are flesh and blood creatures, and they're here. They've always been here. So if we're going to talk about disclosure, we have to come to grips with the fact that this is not a new phenomenon. Secondly, when we're talking about disclosure, they've whitewashed everything that's gone on before the so-called Tic Tac video emerged. Why aren't they calling Bob Lazar up to the congressional inquiries to talk about element 115, the term he coined to describe the fuel source for the Zeta Reticulan craft? The Zeta Reticulan craft were powered by element 115, a heavy element, which was a stable element, and it provided the means for the propulsion system to generate immense gravitational waves, essentially pull a distant part of space towards the craft, shut off the craft, and you're there. There's no linear forward backward movement, right? It's just
Yeah.
a different way of travel. And the reason these Zeta Reticulans could do this is because element 115 is naturally occurring in their star system. You can't find it here. Although the Russians have recently synthesized alien 115, proving Bob Lazar was right. If they can synthesize element 115, and then chances are somewhere in the cosmos, element 115 is naturally occurring. Why don't they interview a bunch of other people? Larry Warren was one of the eyewitnesses at Rendlesham Forest at Capel Green, a clearing at Capel Green, when an alien craft landed, surrounded by about 40 Air Force security personnel, including the deputy wing commander Gordon Williams, who later became a general, right? Not Alex Jones, but Larry Warren was mere meters away from a landed craft, and he was there when these three ETs came out and met with Colonel at the time Gordon Williams. Larry suffered retinal burns. He suffered radiation poisoning. All this was documented in his medical record. Absolute proof. And he's not the only one who's seen this. Why don't they bring him? Right? There's a number of other people. They could interview Donald Schmidt, who I've had on my show as well. Donald Schmidt told me on my show that they simply waited for all the Roswell witnesses to die. Now, long before the cancel culture, long before the surface level truthers were getting intimidated and harassed, alien UFO witnesses, alien investigators were being doxxed, canceled, discriminated against, intimidated, and assassinated. The amount of credible UFO researchers and eyewitnesses who've been assassinated and murdered over time far exceeds, by many orders of magnitude, the number of surface level truthers who've been harassed or murdered. Far exceeds. There's way more of us that have paid the price than them. We're the ones that were fighting for humanity, not them. They've proven they're the ones fighting against humanity by claiming aliens don't exist. Who are in control of this system are aliens. Okay. So now it's clear to me. You want to talk about dividing lines? You want to talk about us versus them? Hey, I'm a Scorpio dragon. This is my attitude. Anyone who says that aliens don't exist, they're part of the problem now, as far as I'm concerned. Right. So why don't they get Bob Lazar up there? Why don't they get Larry Warren up there to talk? Why don't they get Donald Schmidt to talk? Donald Schmidt said the eyewitnesses that held the uh, that magical metallic water material in their hands. They said the metallic material flowed through their fingers like water. And then when it was put back on a flat surface, it would flatten itself out again or resume its original shape. Where have we seen that before? Terminator 2, when that like new robot or whatever Terminator was sent back from the future to go after the kid, John Connor. This time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a good guy Terminator, but the bad guy Terminator they sent through, he's based on metallic alloys that flow like water. That's exactly what the Roswell witnesses saw.
Mm.
They saw that in 1947. The military were going door to door in Roswell, intimidating people, threatening them, ripping their houses apart, looking for Roswell material, alien wreckage. That happened long before these people started complaining about being shadow banned and, oh, I've lost all my subscribers. I can't log on to my YouTube account, right? All these
Mm.
podcasters. That was what was happening to sovereign citizens in 1947. Sheriff George Wilcox was told he saw the alien bodies. He might have seen one of the living aliens. He was told they were not only going to kill him, they're going to kill his entire family, including his grandchildren.
Oh my God.
How many of these surface level truthers put up with that kind of abuse? Never mind all the alien abductees in my labs who've been
Mhm.
harassed, electromagnetically beamed, all kinds of harassment from the authorities and gang stalking, et cetera, et cetera. We've always been at the front lines. We've always been the ones standing up for the human race. And we're not going to shut up for anybody, because now it's clear to me that a huge swath of the surface level truth community, so called, they're now part of the council culture. It's clear to me they've been
Mm.
co-opted because of their built-in limitations, dogmatic uh, belief in all the nonsense and drivel they've been conditioned to believe, right? So, and
Mhm.
they, they talk about how people like Jay Dyer, oh, he presents himself as like this big shot esotericist. He doesn't know what he's talking about, because
Mm.
it's clear that these so-called elite are hybrids. They're hybrid reptilians. That's why they behave the way they do. That's why they're into these sordid practices in their ceremonies. It's why they have these sordid, uh, bestial, sickening sexual habits, right? Predatory habits.
Yeah.
They're genetically created to be like that, right? So they can't see the forest for the trees, and then they wonder why. Oh, they're so evil. They conduct all these satanic sacrifices and rituals. Well, it's because they're not quite human. That's why, right?
Mhm.
And so, I apologize for going off on a rant, but you asked me what my thoughts about disclosure is, and we can't go forward with disclosure until we acknowledge and recognize what's gone on in the past. And you just look at Congressman Stephen Schiff, who was pushing the government accounting office uh, in America to provide documentation and proof about Roswell. He was killed with a fast-acting cancer, right?
Mm.
You look at all the other researchers over the year. Dr. James McDonald was going around, including testifying at Congress, warning about the dangers of aliens shutting down our electric grid. He cited numerous examples, and I've seen this myself, where aliens caused blackouts, power outages. They were responsible for the Great Northeast Blackout in America, 1966-67 timeframe. Millions of people were without power, and eyewitnesses, including first responders, law enforcement, et cetera, had seen UFOs hanging around power generating plants prior to the onset of the blackout. And that's just one example. Dr. James McDonald was going around warning people about this, and then he conveniently commits suicide. My friend Dr. Carlo Turner, my mentor Barbara Bartley, they all met untimely deaths. So I really take exception to this notion that that we're all just hoaxers. And one final point, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, is the utter hypocrisy of these surface level truthers who are always chirping blue beam. Their utter lack of faith in humanity, where everyone to the beginning of time who's reported alien encounters and seeing alien craft, that they're all liars, they're all hoaxers, they're all in on it. This blue beam psyop. So every old and new report out of Latin America, out of South America, hotbed of UFO alien activity. Every new account out of Europe, every new account out of Asia, they're all in on it. They're all part of the hoax. That's how dumb they are, right? Really,
Not
that's how.
possible.
And again, it's the utter lack of faith in humanity,
Mm.
the ego activation, where they're all just part of this hoax. Every the countless people who had alien encounters and have seen UFOs that have never reported it,
Mhm.
they're part of it too. They're part of it too because they think it. That makes them part of it. See,
Oh.
that's how absurd it is to me, right? That really.
Yeah, I know. No, interesting because you're critically thinking because you're actually looking at ancient history and modern history and how it's actually they obviously link together, and this is the thing, the whole Project Bluebeam stuff. If you cited it with your own eyes, right, like you said, and it's quite different to like a lot of people think it's conspiracy or whatever. It's not, it doesn't, when they film things and they whatever they think it is, it's probably not real. Or but citing something is like with your own eyes. It's different. It's an experience, and like I don't know how.
Well,
Yeah.
I was just reading a book about this kid. Uh, this is like in the 1960s. It's well documented. I've got this whole book. It's an anthology of UFO alien sightings and encounters, and I don't remember the exact details. I got the book here somewhere, but it describes this case of a young boy who saw an alien in his backyard, freaked out, told his parents. Kid was traumatized. They put him under hypnotic regression, and sure enough, he'd seen aliens. And the hypnotic regression, it says, I believe what the kid says he saw and what came out in regression. Point being is that when that kid in Las Vegas is saying that there's an alien in my backyard, see that's not even unusual. In the annals of ufology and serious alien research, these beings do show up in people's backyards. They show up in people's bedrooms, right?
Mm.
So again, it was an example. The whole surface level community rises up. Las Vegas, aliens in the backyard, distraction. Distraction from what? Who's being distracted? All these sleepwalking people out there who don't know anything. Who are going to roll over the next time a big scamdemic or the next big hoax comes along. They're being distracted. Well, if they're worried about those people being distracted, they've taken their eyes off the prize, right? Because at this point, if these people are all around us can't wake up at least to the basics, right? There's no point, as far as I'm concerned, to try to educate them. Why? They'll just be angry and they'll report me, or as they say around here,
Mhm.
they'll dob me. They'll dob me in, right? So who's being distracted? It's
Yeah.
the blue beam itself is the psyop. I keep saying that, and I'll keep saying that. And until there's a real effort to get people, real whistleblowers who've handled the technology, and real military whistleblowers who've handled the technology, worked on the technology, seen aliens, been around aliens. And I can think of a number of different facilities and installations around the world in America where these people work, and on a daily basis they work around aliens, right? And for people to balk or be revolted by that notion that there's ongoing interactions with non-humans and humans in certain above ground and but mostly underground facilities and undersea facilities, it just shows you how dumbed down the world is, because you can see once again in ancient engravings, reliefs, and carvings and artwork, giants with their little tiny human servants. Again and
Mhm.
again, you see this. It's very common. And the ancient texts are full of such accounts. But what they do is this kind of these mental gymnastics where they try to say, oh, that's just a metaphor. It doesn't matter. It's just superstitious mumbo jumbo. Very convenient for them to say that because it's
Mhm.
very dismissive. It doesn't require any research. Like, for
Mhm.
example, this is not easy reading. Okay. I'm used to reading narrative history where a guy can just tell a story about a series of battles or campaigns, right?
Yeah.
He's getting into the words. and all the variations and similarities with other words and other languages, all denoting the same things. It takes
Hmm.
time to study and research that, right? So anyway, I digress, but please,
No,
your
no,
thoughts on
no,
that are
no. I agree. I want to. I want to write that one down because it looks interesting. Holographic culture.
culture.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna check that one. Thank you. Yeah, I think also with the because it is embedded in a lot of text, like you said, but people turn a blind eye or don't properly understand what the the meaning is, and well, it's just very hard. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's an individual choice to think that way. You can't force someone, like you said, to
No,
research further.
I mean, if they truly had a scientific mind instead of a mind or what passes for a mind, like bogged down by all these dogmas, science is now
Hmm.
a religion, scientism, right? Who's the world's biggest scientist now? This diversity hire, whatever his name is, that black guy in America, diversity hire, right? He could have his
Oh,
own
yeah,
encounter. Yeah, Tyson DeGrasse, whatever the heck
yeah,
his name
yeah.
is.
I know.
He
Yeah.
he can have a face-to-face encounter with an alien, and he will never tell anyone about it, which tells me anyway, that he's still a slave. Because if you can't speak your mind because of the position you hold, you're a slave. You're a
Hmm.
slave. You're indebted to the people who are writing your paychecks. So he's still a slave as far as he's diversity hire, but he's still a slave because he's still shilling and fronting for a control system that says aliens don't exist. And people ought to remember that by this point, it's the aliens themselves that were in large part responsible for the cover up. They're just forcing their hybrid minions to maintain the cover up. And now what we're seeing now is a spin off that with this quasi kind of watered down disclosure, right? But
Yeah.
again, yeah. But there was a lot of assassinations, political assassinations. John F. Kennedy wanted to reveal the basic truth that the alien presence is here. Assassinated. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal, who was a friend of John JFK, assassinated. He was an original member of MJ-12, assassinated because he was troubled by the fact that the aliens were here and he wanted to put information out to the public. They got rid of him, right? So this is again, it just shows you that when it comes to maintaining the security lid over the subject of alien life forms here on Earth, manipulating human society. Of course, there are countless people that are being abducted by aliens all the time and have been for a long time, generations. Okay. That is one truth they don't want to get to the general public because it will show that what passes for a government, which is really a hybridized government of the aliens themselves, is weak and helpless and can't do anything about it. And that will instill a lot of fear. And this goes back to the Brookings Institute report about the potential danger of the public becoming aware en masse that aliens and alien craft are here, and
Mm.
that esotericist wannabe esotericist Jay Dyer over on Infowars, he cited the Brookings report as proof of blue beam. See, this is that semantical twisting again, because the
Mm.
report, if you read the
Mm.
report, it's specifically warning about people like Jay Dyer, these fundamentalist, zealots who, when exposed with the reality of the alien presence here, they're going to have a complete meltdown. They're the ones that are the threat, is what the paper was pointing out. The Brookings Institute paper. He
Yeah.
wasn't the only one. Victor Marchetti, who wrote the book, the CIA and the Cult of Secrecy, one of the real original whistleblowers. I've got his book. It's heavily redacted, of course, but it's like the original that came out. But he wrote a paper about the UFO secrecy subject, and he said pretty much the same thing that the Brookings Institute paper wrote, stated, which basically, in essence, was all of the institutions which we take for granted, religion, economics, industry, education, everything would be rendered null and void if it all just came out that aliens are here, aliens are manipulating human society, aliens have always been manipulating human society. What Marchetti warned was he doesn't necessarily ascribe to the notion that society will collapse, but the powers that be, some people in the control system have a legitimate fear of losing control.
Mm-hmm.
Because if nothing else, if you look at they're always talking about alternative energy, but in terms of silly windmills and what have you. You want to talk about alternative energy, we're talking about alien technology, right?
Yeah.
Some of these craft may be powered by water for all we know. Okay, and then
Mm.
some of the information that's come out suggests that in some cases. So overnight, the petrochemical company is going to, which is a major fundamental plank upholding this whole rotten
Yes.
system,
Yes.
automatically the petrochemical company is going to uh, be severely impacted by the
Mm.
fact that the governments of the world, the corporations of the world, have had alien technology, have alien fuel sources, alien materials, which could solve all of our problems energy wise overnight. Overnight. This is what Tesla wanted to do.
Yeah.
Equip everyone with a little antenna, and they receive as much energy as they want.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, that's not going to fly with these controllers. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
so when they cite when the Jay Dyers of the world cite the Brookings Institute, that's just outward projection because the paper was really warning about people like him, who's going to freak out,
Yeah.
and his religion and his zealotry is going to be activated because and not realize that the whole Old Testament is all about aliens, non-human life forms, flying craft. It just coached in the Latin language of the vernacular. Okay, they didn't say, "Oh, look, this craft up there looks like a TR-3B." They didn't say that in biblical times. They referred to like flaming chariots, flaming wheels, shields, flying shields. They used the language of the vernacular at the time,
Mm.
right? That's how it is to this day. There's places in Mexico where the locals in some places are so habituated to thinking in terms of brujas, witches, that when you see a video of a clear alien craft like hovering and flying around, the locals will say, "Oh, those are witches," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
it's just a tradition for that area. So it's no different in other parts of the world in ancient times when they describe flying, wheels, flying chariots, etc., etc. That's how they spoke,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so people need to remember that these sightings of triangular craft, that's another fallacy that all triangular craft are of necessity man-made nonsense. That's they've been described for countless millennia. So anyway,
Mm.
please. Sorry, I'm going off on another rant.
No, it's brilliant. I like it because you have really in-depth knowledge, and I think that when it comes to religion, obviously that's it's one of the major controlling institutes on earth, and it's sad that people can't interpret it, in the way that it's supposed to be. Like I know you have to do a lot of your own inner research, and people just turn a blind eye to a lot of stuff because it's convenient or it fits their own belief system that they already, because they're
Yes,
not open-minded. Yeah.
because
If
ego is a block to learning. And if someone thinks they know everything about their own religion, for example, then they're going to automatically rebuff any attempt to show them, well, let's show you the origins of this, how this
Yes.
came to be, how so many of the practices and customs adopted by Christianity pre-existed Christianity by a wide margin with these so-called pagan Near Eastern cultures, right? They're not going to want to hear that. And you look at another person, I forget her name, but she was former InfoWars girl, and she went off and did her own thing. But she was talking about how, oh yeah, all these elite Hollywood celebrity types like Madonna. Madonna is a Gnostic. Madonna is as far from being a real Gnostic as it's possible to be. The Gnostics weren't like spirit cooking Satanists like Madonna.
I
You know, they were closer to the biblical ideal. What the Essenes used to be, right? This is why the Albigensian Crusade occurred, to wipe out all those Gnostics in France with the help of the French king and his army, and then
know.
the Pope. They launched a crusade against the heretics of who were Gnostics, who knew the original teachings of Jesus. That's why they got rid of him. So for it just shows you again the knee jerk response of anything that's not specifically spelled out in the Bible. Not that they understand it anyway, the Bible, but like Gnosticism. Oh, Madonna's into Gnosticism, therefore Gnosticism is satanic. A friend of mine was pointing out that you get around people in any kind of a Christian group or a religious group, and then you mention that you're a psychic or you do psychic readings, you do psychic work, uh, satanic, like
Mm. Yeah, it
what
is.
did,
Yeah.
what did they think? What did they think these Christian mystics did back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
so
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, please continue.
No, that just reminded me of Edgar Casey. He was a devout Christian his whole life, but he was very much like a psychic, and he channeled information and all that kind of stuff, which just proves the point. It just goes to show that it's your own inner work. Like he was still, I
Yes,
don't think it doesn't matter what you identify as your spiritual notions. Like it's up to you to decide like what's going on. And a lot of religious people just take it for word from someone else. Like they're
yes.
yeah, that's the issue here. They're not able to like critically think or like just be open to the fact. There
Well,
are
it's very intolerant, isn't it? We're
intolerant.
looking,
Yeah,
it's all, they accuse the left of being cancel culture when these dogmatic fundamentalists, right? Their their elimination is their bias. They're into cancel culture. That's what they're all about, right? And so, going forward, when it becomes increasingly obvious that our foes, our oppressors, our tormentors are non-human in origin, right?
mm,
They're going to find themselves on the outside looking in because a lot of people are going to realize that they're part of the problem. They're not part of the solution.
yeah.
That's the way I see it. Because to suggest that some lonely back hiker in the Pacific Northwest on his own, and they're going to send a UFO to hover over him just to fool him in furtherance of the blue beam deception. See, that doesn't even make sense. So let's just fool this guy who may or may not even report the sighting. We're just going to take one of our craft out of a hangar, fly it all the way over there, and the pilot's job is to hover over this guy, so he has a UFO experience. And that, as absurd as that sounds, right? That's what these blue beamers really think. And then it's tied in also the reluctance to absolute reluctance to look at the very real possibility that the whole chemtrail agenda, aerosol spraying, is non-human in origin. Because if you
Mm,
look at the close-ups of some of these chem spraying planes, they're not planes at all. Sometimes you just see a fuselage, and so many of the craft over the years that have been reported by pilots and other people, uh, cylindrical in shape, barrel shaped, cigar shaped, right? So when I see a close-up of a video, a still photograph, zoomed in, and it shows just the fuselage and all these, you know, uh, things, plumes streaming out of it. Okay, that's not a plane. Or if you look at the um,
yeah.
close-ups that show like stubby wings on either side of the fuselage, it's too small to support the plane. And sometimes these stubby wings are not even connected to the fuselage. And
Mm,
sometimes there's all kinds of weird light phenomena with and around these chem planes, including metaphysical issues. Like they'll fly into a cloud bank, but they won't come out the other side. Okay, so that's a problem.
mm.
Let me close the door. I'll be right
Yeah.
back. I hear someone knocking. Okay, be right back.
Okay. Okay. Yep. I can pause it. Just wait. Okay. Back. Yep.
Yeah, I just want to complete that thought about the chem spraying. It's clearly some of these planes are not normal craft, and you see the extreme maneuvers that they do. You can track their maneuvers by the plumes they leave behind. I mean, some of these pilots, they're more acrobatic than the Blue Angels. You know, the way they
Mm.
just weave in and out, and the chemtrails like merge and twist and
Oh, yeah.
integrate, with one another.
Uh-huh.
That's not normal, and it's increasingly at low altitude. And we don't hear sonic booms. We don't hear planes. Planes make noise, right? We have a regular chemtrail plume right over this house. I never
Oh.
hear a plane fly overhead here, right?
Mm.
I used to work at an air base, and I used to live in San Diego, the final approach for incoming airliners would come right over my apartment building.
Hmm.
I know what planes sound like at close range, and these chem planes don't make a sound. But then, the tendency again amongst the surface level truthers is, oh, that's just some weird geoengineering, and no, they're terraforming. They're reducing the amount of sunlight getting to the surface of the planet, and for what purpose? Clearly, it's not for our
Hmm.
benefit or the
Hmm.
benefit of all life forms. It's benefit for someone or something else.
Yeah, that's true. They're definitely interfering with the sun and yeah, I can feel that. Uh-huh. Well, it's interesting because you progress in your research and you learn things because you have an open mind. But some of these people just are so dogmatic. They're not willing to accept that, okay, maybe this is different to what I previously, thought. That's the issue here. I think people just are so stuck on like, or they're just, I don't know, they find maybe their truth or whatever, and they don't want to deviate anywhere else because everyone has their own perspective. We need to respect that. Like, it's not like just one thing, right? It's everyone has their little, um, like, like something to bring forward, like everyone's got that.
Yeah, they all have something to bring to the table. It's what I find objectionable is this this cancel culture, which holds that I can't do my research because I'm creating a distraction and I'm advancing some kind of deception scheme, right? When
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
the ones that have been you know exposing all this from the beginning. That's my beef about the whole thing. And if people just take the time to just like, let me give you an example. The last few years has really exposed those people, not all of them, but some of them, in the so-called truth community as being shills, liars, and frauds for one reason or another, right? Sometimes they're
Hmm.
just misguided. They just went along with the official fear-mongering narrative about, this, that, or the other treatment, whatever the case may be, right? And you would have thought they would have
Yeah,
known better, right? I mean, they
yeah,
know about all this other stuff, and how can they fall for this? Well, when it becomes an existential threat to them, then things like reason, logic, uh, you know, deep study, all that goes out the window, because a lot of these people have an innate kind of uh, need to give away their power to an authority figure to protect or save them, right? So there's
yeah.
that element, but then there's this other element where you allow them, you leave them on your Facebook friends list in our example, because they're not really that offensive, and they come out with interesting stuff every once in a while, right? But then in the recent past, when the Sound of Freedom movie came out, right,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is exposing and making an issue out of global child trafficking, right? And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's a psyop, it's a distraction." There we go again. Everything's a distraction. Everything's a psyop. And so we found out, like, who out there is against the exposure of child trafficking. It's like, okay, maybe you don't like the movie, maybe you don't like the participants, and maybe you don't like Mel Gibson. But what's wrong with exposing the reality of child trafficking, right?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that basic premise? There's nothing wrong with it, right?
No.
And then in the recent past, you saw with the Miami Mall incident, and I will say right now that anyone who suggests to you that it was merely fireworks and kids fighting, they're either a fool or a knave, because the panic that had set in with all those people at that mall running in blind panic to the point where one of them, at least one of them, probably maybe more, but one of them for sure, because I saw the video, ran blindly into a busy intersection and was run over by a fast moving car. The person was probably dead before he hit the ground. Okay, that kid didn't answer a want ad from Craigslist because they
Hmm.
needed crisis actors. Okay, it didn't happen that way. When you see the zoomed out view of people fleeing the mall in just running in blind panic, okay, that's not some drill that went wrong. Forget about all the cops who showed up. Forget about them. Just all the people running in blind panic. What could make them behave in that fashion? And then when you see the video, and you look at the frame by frame analysis of the side of the portal. And that was the good thing about this. And coincidentally, as fate would have it, Barton Nunnally over at Inhumanoids, well known, highly regarded cryptozoologist, he obtained a video from one of his sources in the woods. I forget what part of America, but it was in some woodsy place that showed a portal, and also at times a side view of the portal where you can see, here's the event horizon, to use a Stargate SG-1 term, of the side view of the portal, and then you could see the something coming out of it. You can see behind the portal in this direction the trees and
Mhm,
everything else, but coming out rather this way, right,
mhm,
was
mhm,
something,
mhm.
a
Yeah.
humanoid form. You see the same thing in the Miami video where it's a
Mm.
CCTV security camera where you see the side view of the portal, and
Yeah.
you see something coming out of it, and you see a burst of energy coming out of it. So to me, that tells me that there was active portals. These beings were coming out, sent
Mm.
everyone into a frenzy of panic. That's why no one's going to stop and take a video when they're running for their lives. Okay, it's just, and the eyewitnesses were saying these things were kind of, glitching. They were kind of phase shifting in and out of our reality. And then the blue beamers were screaming, "Oh, that's proof it's a hologram." No, they can make better holograms than that, right? Because everyone who's studied cryptozoology, cryptids, everyone who's studied alien non-human life forms, they know that some of these entities glitch in and out of our reality. Sometimes they become translucent, sometimes they become invisible. Bigfoot, Sasquatch can make himself or herself, some of them can, make themselves translucent or invisible, right?
Yeah.
So, that's another thing that's in our favor. When they say, "Oh, look, the witnesses were saying that they were glitching," no, that actually, that to me, that actually enhances their credibility and the veracity of the story. Point
Yeah.
being is that when the Miami Mall story broke, all these do-gooders popped up. It's a distraction. The Epstein list is coming out. Oh, the same Epstein list that came out a few years back. Nothing happened back then. Nothing's going to happen now, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so a lot of these do-gooders popped up. Oh, this is just a distraction, and they start showing videos of these huge inflatable aliens. Clearly, it's a doll or a big inflatable alien, and they're saying this is what they were seeing. Okay, so
Mm.
they're
Wow.
revealing themselves. These frauds are revealing themselves, which is good.
Yeah.
I for a lot of these people, I had doubts about them anyway, because
Okay.
I go by my initial gut instinctual reaction to them. Are they
Mm.
someone, or are they providing information that I'd be interested in? My intel requirements are very specific. It's not the same as anyone else's intel requirements. This is why I'm not one of those people who just, dogmatically, religiously, checks out millions of different podcasts and millions of different YouTube channels. I don't have a time for that. I don't, there's only certain types of information I'm actively seeking out. And if someone is offering something and I'm not into it, I don't get the right vibe from it, that's okay. I'm not going to make a value judgment about them or their research. It just doesn't do anything for me, right? But I keep
Yeah.
them around anyway. I let them on my friends list. Then
Yeah.
later on, they reveal themselves, right? They big time. So I've had some of these jokers on my show before, right?
Mm.
So that's a good thing. The cream is starting to rise to the top. The separation of water and oil. We're starting to see it in a big way, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do feel like, I mean, I feel for the people that are, they're probably also influenced, they're not understanding that it's coming from somewhere. Like, I've been susceptible to that. I don't know everything, no one knows everything, but I do understand what you're saying. Like, some people are actively going against, like, people that have research in this field, people that have thorough knowledge and using it like their own stupidity or wherever it's coming from to count to counter what's the truth. We're all here
Yeah,
for, yeah, I mean, most of us that are seeking are here for the truth. We just want to know what's going on.
yeah.
And
I mean, like I don't jump onto people's news feed and say this is a hoax, that's a distraction. It's not up
oh
to me. It's
yeah,
not up to me to do
yeah.
that. You know, I've got better things to do. So why do they make a point of jumping onto my news feed and presume to school me about what I should or should not focus my attention on. To me, that's highly objectionable. And don't anyone take any liberties and assume that they can do that to me, because I'm going to research what I want to research, come
That's
hell or high
right.
water, right? And so
Yeah.
when we get to the point where we stop caring about what what these faceless people, for in large part, want or feel or think about us, that's a major stride on the road to human race recovery, right there. Is stop thinking and caring. And I've talked about this on other shows. Okay, look at the irony. They're saying, "Oh, Miami Mall, aliens in the backyard in Las Vegas is all a distraction from the Epstein list." And look what's happened with one of the eyewitnesses. What was her name? Juliet. I forget her name. Forgive me,
Mhm.
but she appeared on an interview. Gareth Ike was interviewing her, David Icke's son,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
she stated for the record she saw Jeffrey Epstein shapeshift into a reptilian. Hmm? See, watch what the Alex Joneses and Jade Ayers are going to do. They're going to ignore that testimony, cancel culture, because it doesn't fit
Mhm.
into their narrative, and in fact, it buttresses our argument that the reptilian overlordship is what's running this planet, and it detracts from their bogus narrative that aliens are not real, right? So watch how they systematically ignore. They may even go so far as to criticize and try to cancel her. You watch. I hope it doesn't happen. And one of the
Mhm.
other eyewitnesses, on survivors of Epstein Island, she was an artist, and she drew all these paintings of the subterranean underground labs, etc. She drew a painting of Galan Maxwell, which showed Galan Maxwell's face and then the long neck and body of a brontosaurus dinosaur, right? So she
Mhm.
conjoined the face of Galan Maxwell and a dinosaur. What's she trying to say? And,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
within the context of an underground genetics lab. Now, what do the fundies say? There are no aliens, there's only demons. Oh, well, you got a problem now. Because if Jeffrey Epstein shapeshifts into a reptilian and he's flying around in private jets and he's usually using digital devices, that makes him a reptilian who uses technology, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Can't say he's a demon now because he uses technology. He flies around in a private plane. He's even got a submarine. All right? He's a
Mhm.
pretty well off demon.
Mhm.
See?
Mhm.
So say they constantly paint themselves into a corner. They constantly, the old saying, you give them enough rope, let them hang themselves with it. And that's what's happening. Right?
Mhm.
You watch. This should be front pages on every single alternative news website that an eyewitness who was inducted and recruited into the Epstein sex slavery cult and survived the ordeal, that she saw Epstein shapeshift into a reptilian. And also, and I pointed this out recently in the Netflix documentary about Jeffrey Epstein, he was made to give a deposition because a lot of his accusers, these women that he trafficked, right, when most of them were still young girls,
Mhm.
they said there's something very unusual about his penis. Very, very unusual about it. And
Mhm.
they asked Epstein in the deposition. Not only did he not answer, he got up and walked out. Now, that's significant because those women who have had reptilian encounters or have had rape encounters with males who were reptilian human hybrids of the shapeshifting variety, let's say, like Jeffrey Epstein, they
Mhm.
say that the penis of these reptilians is more like a dog's penis, and that it's for the most part recessed within this housing, for a lack of better term, like a
Mhm.
non-desexed male dog, and then the penis comes out of the housing, right? It extends and then it retracts. I'm
Mhm.
guessing I'm guessing that's
Mhm.
what these women saw, because they said that what they saw was completely different than they've ever seen before or imagined, right? Now, how do they come up with that kind of a detail, right?
Yeah.
Unless they've seen it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it jibes with eyewitness testimony who've seen the genitalia of real reptilians, of which Jeffrey Epstein is one. And
Mhm.
see, I didn't need that lady's, and I'm thankful she gave it, but I didn't need that lady's testimony to know that Jeffrey Epstein was a reptilian because I just look at his facial structure. I look at
Mhm.
just the way his face is shaped. He's a reptilian hybrid. All he's missing is scales. I already knew that, right? So point being is that cherry picking. Here's another cherry picking aspect. Cherry picking because they're going to say, look, listen to all these other Epstein survivors, just not this one who's talking about
Yeah, right.
Epstein being a reptilian. Here's another bit of cherry picking for you. Alex Jones is always saying, "Oh, E. Howard Hunt, I spoke to his son, and E. Howard Hunt admitted that that he assassinated. He was part of the assassination of JFK." Here's where the cherry picking comes in. E. Howard Hunt, he was one of the CIA operatives, one of the so-called plumbers who deliberately botched the black bag robbery job at the Watergate Hotel, which was the headquarters of the Democratic National Convention. Right? They
Mhm.
deliberately had a botched burglary in order to get arrested and for Nixon to be kicked out of the White House. That's how they usually get rid of a sitting president. They don't have to kill him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they have in the past, but it's an extreme measure. Point being is that um, E. Howard Hunt's attorney, a guy with the last name of the name escapes me for the moment. Caddy. Caddy was his last name. Anthony Caddy. I can't remember his first name.
Okay.
Anthony Caddy, Hunt's attorney, asked him, why did they kill Kennedy? And this is what E. Howard Hunt said to Caddy. He was killed because he was going to release our greatest national secret. And what's that? He was asked. The alien presence. Not only that, but JFK wanted to collaborate with the Soviets. This is what he kept talking about, the space
Mhm.
race and the
Mhm.
Soviets and in relation to the Soviets, etc. He wanted to not only reveal the basic existence, not all the hardcore stuff you would think, but the aliens being here, but he wanted to do it in collaboration with the Soviets, and that was the last straw for Majestic 12. And you know, you've probably seen the partially burned memo that CIA director at the time,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
Dulles, Alan Dulles wrote, basically authorizing the assassination of Kennedy. So that's another example of cherry picking. Alex Jones will say, "Oh, I had E. Howard Hunt's son on my show talking about how E. Howard Hunt admitted to his son that he was part of the Kennedy assassination, but he's not going to want to talk to or know about E. Howard Hunt's attorney, who said the reason JFK was murdered was because he was going to release the truth about the alien presence. This is also why Marilyn Monroe was murdered, because she
Oh.
was into UFOs and she had a lot of pillow talk with JFK about the subject, and also why Dorothy Kilgallen, a well-known, highly regarded journalist of the time who knew Jack Ruby personally, who was sitting in the courtroom during these JFK hearings, right? She was murdered, right? Because she knew about JFK's interest in aliens, and she'd also written um, articles picked up by the news wires about what the British government apparently knew about crashed alien craft and the recovery of alien bodies, right? Dorothy Kilgallen, she was similarly murdered. So
Mhm.
it's an
Mhm.
example of cherry picking. Everyone out there considers themselves a JFK assassination expert, but some of them will go so far as to suggest Mossad and the Israelis were involved. Well, to some degree, they all had their fingers in the pie, right? But the real reason why they did it was because of aliens, and they
Mhm.
can't deny that. They can try to wave a magic wand to make it go away. They can't, because there's the testimony of E. Howard Hunt's lawyer, right? But they're going to studiously ignore that, like they do everything else, because that's where their programming comes in.
Mhm. Mhm. It's like they don't want to connect. Just want to, yeah, cherry pick,
It's
like
too
you
scary.
said.
It's too scary for them. It's too scary for them.
I mean,
It's
it
so
is.
confronting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I'll give them that. It is a bit scary when you first, but if you're intentionally, you know, that's the thing. Like for me, it comes back to the intention of these people. Are they like really? Because obviously Jones is, he's not, um, he's not, he's not a truth seeker. I don't know what he is. He's a propaganda.
I used to sing his praises insofar as him getting the basic surface level truth out. Okay, I give him his
Yeah,
props. He's done a good job for that. But now it's clear to me that he was being groomed essentially for the role he has is now. He and Jay Dyer and others, where they're blue beamers now. They're deniers of the alien
mhm,
reality. When Jones says there are no alien crashes, no recovered alien craft, no alien bodies, that's just sheer willful ignorance. Because the sheer evidence going back decades now, it's there. If anyone wants to see it, it's there. Ryan Wood is coming out. He has come out with a new book talking about over 100 alien crash retrieval cases around the world.
oh,
That he said there was more. He just couldn't fit it all into the same book. And I would say that that's a drop in the bucket because of the continuous alien presence here. Some of these alien beings have been here so long in underground, undersea bases, they might as well be considered de facto Earthlings. Alien in appearance, alien in mentality, alien in technology, but they're Earthlings. They've been here so that long, right?
mm,
So when you
mhm,
consider that many aliens permanently or at least part-time based here, coming and going, and all the other alien and interdimensional races coming and going too, because there's so many resources here. There's people, there's DNA, there's plants, there's mineral resources. There's a lot going on Earth, right, and the solar
yep,
system.
yep,
So
yep.
I would suggest that 100 crash retrievals, that's a drop in the bucket. There's probably countless other alien craft that just got buried over with sediment and earth and rock, right, all over the place. I mean, if a primitive people saw alien crash craft, I mean, what are they going to do about it? Are they going to back engineer it? No. It may wind up in their stories, like when the
Yeah,
Elders crashed or whatever, but it ends there. So, and I would argue that throughout the cosmos there are planets and moons and astronomical bodies littered with alien craft that have come to grief. See, one of the default settings that they have is, well, if they're so advanced, why do they keep crashing? That's a very stupid argument. Everything in the material universe, everything of a mechanical nature, is at times prone to malfunction or breakdown. And
yeah,
that's not even getting into the possibility, the very real possibility that a lot of these craft have been shot down, not just by human military, but by other alien races, continuing this long,
yeah,
um, you know, cosmic feud where they just Earth is just the latest battleground. So they're shooting at each other in our atmosphere, and some of them are going to crash. This is what eyewitnesses have seen in Puerto Rico not too long ago of alien craft being shot at by other aliens, right?
yeah,
So anyway, that's just to point out that this notion of crash retrievals, Alex Jones saying that they've never done it, that's just sheer ignorance on his part, and he's not even qualified to venture an opinion about this subject, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. We get it. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Duh. I know. There is a lot of evidence to show, and obviously Roswell is the main one, like that everyone would should.
Well, there's over 100 first-hand witnesses to Roswell that are all dead now, right?
Mm,
So once again, utter lack of other lack of faith of humanity. All those Roswell witnesses and all the other witnesses, they're all liars. They're all hoaxers. They've all been mind controlled. They're all part of a psyop, right? It's not a
yeah.
psyop if they never heard of it. There are countless real
Yeah.
good UFO alien cases that they've never heard of. How could it be a psyop if they never heard about it? That's a
Hmm.
non sequitur. It doesn't follow, right? So
Yeah.
they paint themselves into a corner constantly.
Yeah. Yep. Mm.
So
It's
I
very
don't know
hard.
if I'm answering any of your questions. There's certain subjects that I'm kind of impassioned about, and right
Yeah.
now it's like I want to keep the uh, alien control factor front and center because that's who we're ultimately up against. We're not up against power mad bankers. Those power mad bankers, most of them are hybrids of reptilians and
Yeah.
other alien races in the first place, right? That's why they control the planet through their financial system.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think this information is important because you need to get to the root of the issue. Can't get to the surface level, like you
We
said.
can't keep scratching the scab. We can't keep scratching
No.
the itch. We got to get
Yeah.
down to the underlying cause of all the inflammation. Is what we have to
Hmm.
do.
Yeah, that's right. We can't change anything if we're just gonna skim it. Especially, yeah. I mean, I just think about the medical tyranny as well as, yeah, all this stuff because they obviously, I mean, I'm not, well, I kind of am against hospitals because just the fact of the, the, I don't know what you call it, but the emergency state of a hospital because they get you in and they make you feel like you have no other option. And that state is like, that's,
And the intimidation and the threats and the utter
yeah.
lack of respect. Look what they did during the lockdowns, right? They
Mhm.
protocoled countless people to death. They held them down. They intubated them. They blew out their lungs. They filled their
Yeah.
kidneys full of remdesivir, right? So when people say, "Oh, they're just following orders," these hospitals and nursing homes, they've proven
Mhm.
they will follow orders. They've proven in spades that they will do it with a guilty thought. Then they'll go out and they'll shoot a video of themselves twerking, okay,
Yeah, I
choreographed,
know.
right?
Yeah.
That just shows you the level of gaslighting. Oh, these hospitals are so full of. There's no one. It's not full of people. They have certain wings where they're locking people up, and they come in with a scratch or a common cold and bring them down, right? That's
Mhm.
so that's what happened. They proved there was an ongoing Milgram experiment. They will follow orders if they're empowered, and the financial incentive with these hospitals and doctors getting
Yeah.
remunerated for diagnosis, not only diagnosis but for using the equipment and using the protocols.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
financially benefited them to misdiagnose countless people because it lined their pockets. These are the
Yeah,
last people that should be involved in treating people's health. It's
that's
completely
right.
satanic and Luciferian.
Exactly. And the other thing is with the emergency thing, that's where I was gonna go. I mean, regular GPs, okay, they are susceptible for legal matters, like if someone wants to sue them or something. But if you're in the hospital, forget it. It's just near impossible to, get someone responsible for misdiagnosis, whatever it is that's happened, because it's so Luciferian, like you said. There's a system in place, and it's horrible because the regular GP is forced to um, almost send because I have a family member that's a doctor, and he said it's hard for me because I have to send the person that's going to complain about me to the hospital because I'm the one that's in threat. I'm the one that's going to get sued because she comes back, the patient that he was talking about, and threatens him. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
so it's like that system is, it frustrates me because
Well,
obviously,
it's really Rockefeller medicine because if you track it back, I mean, you
yeah,
can see the definite before and after when the Rockefellers in America, reptiles, when they basically took over the medical system, took over the medical education system, which is very
yeah,
important. The same way they took over the educational system uh, academically in America, and in particular how they now control the handful of companies that make the school books and make the medical books that the medical students have to learn from.
yeah, yeah,
It's all their teachings, right? So
hmm,
they're going to excrete out of their medical schools and out of the universities and every other institution of learning, so called, all these brainwashed, arrogant, ego activated people with a god complex. 'Cause, you challenge the opinion of some of these doctors, it's just the claws come out, right? They just want to stamp any resistance down. So this whole thing, the last 3 years, this is a godsend to a lot of these control freaks, right? That are in the guise of nurses and doctors and what
oh
have you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thankfully, more and more nurses and doctors around the world are standing up and making a point
yeah,
saying this has to be reevaluated, especially in light of what's happened. But out of sight, out of mind. If people continue to ignore the evidence, whether it's about aliens, whether about medical tyranny, whatever the case may be, right? There's nothing
mm,
you can do about people like that. You have to move on. That's not fertile ground with which to plant seeds, right?
yeah, that's
To
true.
me, they represent an enemy stronghold. Bypass enemy resistance points. Go around them, bounce off them. Find other more receptive people, fertile ground with which to plant seeds. Because that's all we do. We plant seeds, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
some will take root, and most won't. That's just the way it
hmm,
is. right?
That's the way it is. Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, it is a very lonely path that we all face, I think. And ultimately, understanding is knowing that there is no understanding. I think that's where I'm at the moment. As far
Yeah.
as
Hell,
I'm concerned. Yeah.
well, it's like, okay, here's palm of my hand. Okay,
Hmm.
what I have in the center of my palm of my hand is what I know. The rest of the room,
Yeah.
that's what I don't know. Okay, the rest of the house, that's what I don't know, and I'm humble enough to recognize that. That's a
Yes.
problem with these surface level truthers too. They're ego activated, and they're dogmatic, and they think they know everything, which makes
Mm.
them doubly dangerous in my view, because now they have become a force multiplier for this reptilian overlordship, and I hold them directly responsible now for everyone who gets abducted, everyone who disappears in a forest or a national park, everyone who disappears, uh, you know, pulled into one of these reptilian hybrid controlled kidnapping rings. As far as I'm concerned, these surface level truthers that are running interference for them by saying these beings don't exist, they're part of the problem now. They're not just shills. They're not just, trolls or shills. They're
Mm.
actively running interference, whether they realize it or not, for the very controllers of this planet.
Yeah. I think because they're in such a dogmatic view, they're the people that believe them also, like, they're giving their energy away to these people and they're thinking that's the only way. So I don't know, like people like that don't encourage to think for yourself, to understand what's going on, and to use your own discernment, not just to give your power to just, someone that has, researched in a particular topic, but hasn't included other things that are
Yeah,
also
because they
as
have
important.
they have their built-in limitations, right? There's
Yeah,
certain things. There's certain things that they're reluctant to delve into or absolutely refuse to delve into. And that's the problem. One should be willing to go where the evidence leads them, and it could
yeah,
lead them into some very dark, dank holes. It doesn't matter. You got to go where the information leads you. But they have all these blinders and they have all these limitations, plus on top of it, an activated ego, which compounds the whole problem. Right? Makes it virtually
yes,
impossible for any kind of information that contradicts their dogmatic programming to come in. And how do they respond? Through anger, through being emotionally overwrought. The only ones who were emotionally overwrought about these um, alien experiences in the recent past in the mall and other places were these
mm,
surface level truthers. People like
right,
us, these things happen. We take it in stride, right?
yeah,
Who were the ones that were emotionally overwrought? These truthers, so called, right? So they
yeah,
just contradict themselves constantly. They're hypocrites if there ever was one. So
mhm.
anyhow, thank you for having me on your show. I know I rambled on here for a long time, and you
Oh
probably
no,
only touched a fraction of the stuff that you wanted to get into. But you know,
I know it's really brilliant because I really value your discernment. I feel like you're someone that has done a lot of inner work, and I do value people like you that are open minded and are continuously doing the work. It's not about like, whoa, I've got it now, and it's you continuously you discover it, and that's the thing about the other side, or the shills, or whatever you want to call it. They feel like they've got all the answers, and it's all
yeah,
just one thing, and it's not like that. It's like,
no, it's because many of the very same entities, angels, heavenly hosts they call upon, are the watchers of the reptilians or the aliens. See,
yeah,
they don't even
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty sad. You have to have your own connection with your spirit and God,
That's
and
right. You don't need intermediaries. You don't need angels
no,
and messengers, and right.
no, it's your own. Yeah.
Well, for simple-minded people, let's say that I was a simple-minded person several hundred years back, and some angel made a visitation to me. It could have been a
Mm,
Nordic being or some other alien, right? In my simple-minded way of looking at things back then, and especially if this messenger told me I'm a messenger of God, of Yahweh, or whatever,
mhm, mhm.
I'd probably just believe him. Okay,
Yeah,
that's how religions get started. Okay,
that's
that's how
true.
the Mormons got started. Joseph Smith said that Moroni, or Moroni, the being that came to him with these tablets, was like he described him as like a winged salamander. That's like a white Draco. That's you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's like Winged salamander. What are you talking about? It's a winged Draco. That's like the
Yeah.
elite of the reptilians, right? And they created the Mormon religion out of that. See,
Mm-hmm.
that's how
Mm-hmm.
easy it is. So anyhow, thank you so much, Rose. I really appreciate coming on here.
I know, me too. Yeah, thank you. And have a good day. I hope we can do something like this again soon.
Yes, let's do it again.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Take care.
Take care.